Hey there, and welcome to the kickoff of the Intro to Web Development course. The purpose of this video is to kind of run through who I am, why you're listening to this dude in the corner, and some of my goals for the course and just kind of the background info. So I'm going to try to not get too rambly or self-indulgent, but I want to give you sort of the context of where this course came from and what I'm hoping that we all get out of it. So I'm not going to give you my entire life story, but just to give you some background, I will say that I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania called Lancaster. A lot of folks are probably also from Lancaster, so hi. But if not, it's over here. It's a little town in Pennsylvania that's known for like cornfields and Amish people, and it's where I grew up. I grew up right around there-ish in LS for the locals. And my plan when I was in high school was to be a high school English teacher. That was my big plan. So I went to a college locally called Millersville University. Now, Millersville is commonly known for, it's a teaching college, basically. So if you want to be a teacher in Pennsylvania, you generally go to Millersville. So that's why I originally went. I was going to be a high school English teacher because I really liked words and creativity and language and, reading and writing and creativity and all that stuff. Long story short, I changed my major to computer science based on basically a class I had in high school with the amazing Mr. Britton, and then some really nice experiences I had with a professor at Millersville named Dr. Schwartz. She kind of shaped my college experience. So yeah, I changed my major to computer science and never looked back. I guess I'm looking back right now, aren't I? Anyway, I graduated from Millersville, and then I got a job down in the DC area. So that's down here. Got a job in DC on the Virginia side of DC, somewhere in this area, right inside the Beltway, right around there, for a place called MITRE. MITRE CASD is where I worked. I was a contractor of a contractor of a contractor, but I worked for the FAA doing sort of prototype development work. It was interesting, but I sort of had that, I don't know, that education itch. I don't know what to call it, but I had wanted to be a high school teacher, and I liked education and the idea of sort of figuring out how to explain things. I've always been interested in that. So I was a software engineer, but I kind of still had that education itch. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I did a few things. I went to Stack Overflow, and I spent a lot of time like answering questions on Stack Overflow. So I have been a giant nerd and have a bunch of Stack Overflow points. I was a moderator on a few like development forums, that kind of thing, like virtually helping people that way. I also got involved in like the processing and P5 communities during this time, and I started something called Static Void Games. I don't even know if that thing's still up anymore. Let's see. It is. So I started this page, which now I shut it down, but it was all about like using game development to learn the fundamentals of coding. So I spent a good 5 years devoting a lot of my free time to Static Void Games. And also during this time I went to grad school because I thought maybe one day I would be an adjunct professor, and spoiler alert, here I am, I guess, but it took me a little longer than I thought. Anyway, around this time I kind of lost interest in game development as a primary focus. I never really cared about games themselves. I more cared about like the education side of it, or what you could do with games. So I started a different website called Happy Coding. You can go to happycoding.io. It's this one. So happycoding.io. And I started kind of from scratch, taking a lot of the things I had been doing and had been caring about, and building them from the ground up. So I wrote a bunch of tutorials using processing, and eventually I switched over to P5. And it went, from the fundamentals of coding all the way to like really advanced stuff. So I was really cranking out a lot of content just to put this site together in the first place. And I truly loved it, but I was doing it just for fun, for free, in my spare time. And it was maybe scratching that education itch a little bit, but it wasn't my job or anything. I was still working for the government doing prototype development. And right around this time, this is when Google reached out to me. So Happy Coding is completely open source. Most things I do are open source. We'll come back to that later. But Happy Coding is, everyone can see what I'm doing on GitHub. And I was using GitHub, and long story short, this green thing in GitHub, I generally hate it, but it does, it's meant to show off your productivity or whatever. And this is actually how Google Recruiter found me. They found me through this dumb green thing on GitHub. And Google, they reached out and they invited me to come interview at Google, which was terrifying and all that good stuff, or maybe not so good, whatever. But I figured Google did education stuff, right? I don't know. I didn't know what that education stuff was, but I figured maybe that would be my way to get into the education world. So I got the job, and I took the first job that they offered me. Honestly, I probably shouldn't say that, but that's true. And I started at Google Maps. I worked for a team within Google Maps. I moved from the DC area out to California. Now I live somewhere in this area, right by the bay. So I worked for a team within Google Maps. I've been a tech lead. I recently moved to the education team, but I'm still a software engineer. Anyway, during the last 5 years that I've been at Google, I've also done some other educational things. So Google has a program called Software Product Sprint. It used to be called CodeU, but they renamed it because lawyers. And I've been very involved in this. I help build the curriculum that folks work through when they do Software Product Sprint. So if you know of anybody who has gone through CodeU or Software Product Sprint in the last 5 years or so, they probably know some of what I've worked on. Anyway, so I've done a few other things in the last 5 years. I've also done something called CC Fest, which is really cool. It's all about creative coding, using code and being creative all through the lens of helping people learn the fundamentals of coding. And that has been really cool. More recently, I've worked with Upperline Code to do some one-off educational things. I really love these folks as well. But these were all kind of one-off weekend things or 1 week at a time, that kind of deal. And it was really, really rewarding and really interesting and really fun, and it helped me scratch that education itch. But it wasn't it wasn't a full-time job, or it wasn't even a semester-long class or anything like that. So I know I'm getting rambly, but I will say that in the last few months or so, remember all the way back in Millersville, I mentioned a professor named Dr. Schwartz. Turns out that she is now the chair of the department, computer science department at Millersville. So she reached out and asked if I was interested in teaching a course at Millersville. And I said, absolutely. This is kind of a culmination of a lot of what I had been working towards, honestly, for most of my career. And the idea of sort of returning to my roots and helping, helping teach people who are from the same place as me was really interesting to me. SPS, or Software Product Sprint, had been really fun, but it's, I had been connecting with folks from all over the place, not typically from my hometown. So the idea of going back to my roots was really interesting. Anyway, so that's kind of the origin story of why I am teaching this class. So here I am returning to my roots. Now, as we get into like talking about the content of the class, I guess I'll say, maybe I'll just be honest with you. I have no idea what I'm doing. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but basically the way it works is I have 4 hours a week to fill. That's the requirement. But it's up to me how I fill them. And, they gave me options. They said I could do it completely asynchronously. So I could just create a bunch of videos, which I was really tempting, honestly, because I've been creating videos just kind of for the happy coding stuff, just for fun in my spare time. So I don't know. I know how to do that. I'm not rich and famous from it or anything, but the idea of doing like a code along video, that's not too scary to me. So I know how to do this. This is like a known thing for me. So I could have done that. I could have just created videos and released them and never met with any students synchronously at all. And that was an option. The other extreme would have been to make it completely synchronous, which means that, it's going to be virtual since I live in California and Millersville is in Lancaster. It was always going to be virtual. But we could have maybe met 3 times a week and done like the traditional lecture style class. So those were kind of the 2 extremes of the spectrum of what I could choose from. And I wasn't sure which one of those to choose from. I got all up in my feelings about it. I wrote a whole blog post about it that I don't recommend reading because it's too long, but just to sort of show you how in my feelings I was, like here it is. I was thinking about all the different options I could do. But basically what I chose is maybe a hybrid model. So I didn't want to just release videos because, I don't know, like what's the point of teaching an official course if you're just releasing videos? Like I could just keep doing that on YouTube, right? Like there's value, I think, in having contact with not just with a teacher or a professor, but with also like everyone else who is learning with you. I think that's why you take a course instead of doing a search for how to do web development on your own. You take a course because you want those sort of contacts, those points of contact with other people. So that's why I didn't want to go full, just all videos. On the other hand, I've never taught a semester long course before, so I wasn't sure if I was going to do a good job of like a traditional lecture. As you can tell, I tend to ramble. And, doing that in a course where I'm not sure if it's, my strong suit, so I kind of like the idea of leaning on sort of what I know how to do, which is create video content. And the other part is kind of philosophical. I have this belief in sort of the open source manifesto or whatever you want to call it, like the perspective that information should be free or knowledge should be free. So everything I've done in the last 10 years, well, other than my day job, everything I've done for fun is open source. You can read the code of pretty much everything I've done. And I like that. I like the idea of just putting it out there. And I think there are, interesting side effects of that, like maybe a different teacher at a different school could use the content to teach their own course, or maybe someone who's not in an official course could learn on their own and get the same kind of content that they would if they had taken the course. So it's kind of, the idea of like an open source course. What would that look like? So all of that's kind of bouncing around in my head. And I also want to mention that I want to make it fair. So there are students who are taking this course. In fact, that's probably you. Hi. You paid money to take this course. And so I don't want it to seem like you could have just gotten the exact same experience just for free on the internet. So I'm releasing the content on the internet, but the sort of the stuff that you can't get for free is like the interactions with each other, the interactions with me, the sort of, the guarantee of feedback. So like grades and points of contact, like email, and there's a Discord and all that stuff. So none of that is public. That's just for folks like officially taking the course. But I am going to experiment with releasing the content itself publicly. like I said, I'm not sure about that. It's I want to get it right. I want to be fair, and I want to, make sure that everyone gets what they feel they want out of it, if that makes sense. But I don't know. It's experimental, so I really welcome feedback on that. If you're working through the course, whether you're taking it officially or unofficially, and you have opinions, please tell me. I promise I won't be offended or anything. I really welcome that kind of feedback. Okay, so that's me all up in my feelings. Let's stop talking about my feelings and let's talk about the course. So I have a couple goals. I have 5 goals. I'm going to run through them real quick. You could maybe expect that my goal is to teach you web development, and I guess it is, but I think more importantly than that, I have, maybe meta goals around how to do that. So first, I am going to focus on practical knowledge in this course. A lot of college courses, at least when I took them, they're kind of heavy on the theory. So you might learn a lot about how CSS would theoretically cascade and all the different rules about it, and how it works behind the scenes and all that stuff. And then you get an A+ in the class. Great job. You learn the theory. And then you open up a text editor and you want to, you want to center some content, and you have no idea how to do that. And that was a really common experience in my college career, not specifically CSS, but just generally. I got a little frustrated by this feeling of I want to do stuff with my knowledge. And so that's priority 1 in this course, is going to be everything you learn is something you can use, and it's something you can use right now to do something that is hopefully interesting. Second goal is I'm going to focus on demystification. And by that, I mean, so honestly, I was really terrified of web development for a solid, ever since I started learning coding until I learned it, which was many years. I stayed far away from web development because it seemed scary. And it seemed scary for a bunch of reasons, but I just avoided it. I stuck with what I knew, and I didn't want to learn it because it seemed like this big, scary thing. And then I spent, a weekend playing around with it once, and turns out it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. And that's because the stuff that I was uncertain about was, the real fundamental things, like how do I create an HTML file? What do I do with that file? What can I do with it next? Those kinds of things that once you know them, but it's really hard to get that initial knowledge, I think. So I am not going to get too far into the theory or the weeds of every single HTML tag, because I don't think it's important. I think the important thing is knowing the sort of fundamentals of how something works. Which I guess leads me to my next goal, which is the fundamentals. So there are a bunch of different ways you can do all of this stuff. If you do a search for how to make a website, you will get millions of results. And they're all going to have opinions, and they're all going to say, here's the best way to do it, and this is the newest way, and oh my God. And they're all wrong. Or maybe I shouldn't say they're all wrong, but none of them is right. There's no one right way to do anything. Which is also pretty frustrating when you're first starting out. But there are fundamentals that everything is going to have in common that you can then use to take whatever path you think is interesting. So I'm not going to tie us to any one framework. I'm not going to tie us to any one editor. We are going to use GitHub Pages just because it's what I know the best, and it's whatever. It'll work. But we don't have to use that. I don't want you to think that you are learning one thing. What you are learning is the fundamentals of web development, which you can apply to anything. All right, this is getting long, so I'm going to power through it. The fourth goal I want to talk about is, like I mentioned earlier, you might think that my goal with a intro to web development course is to introduce you to web development, but here's the secret: it's not. I mean, I shouldn't say it's not. You are going to learn web development in this course. But more importantly, what you're going to learn is what I call the process of problem solving. And that is, you take a goal, you break it down into smaller steps, and then you do research and you try stuff out. And that's sort of a meta lesson that is way more important than like knowing which HTML tag makes this text bigger. I don't care. I don't care if you know that. I don't think you need to know that. What's important is being able to find that answer. And you can use search engines and resources like W3 Schools and MDN and all that stuff. And that process of figuring stuff out, that's way more important than memorizing any particular tool or keyword or syntax or whatever. So a big component of this course is going to be that process of problem solving rather than memorizing a bunch of stuff. And last but not least, maybe the overarching theme is that I want it to be personally meaningful to you. So I don't want to have assignments that are like, step 1, use this particular HTML tag to do this particular thing. Step 2, add this particular HTML tag that does this particular thing. Because, I don't know, I can tell you what to do, but I really value the sort of creative aspect of coding and problem solving. And I think there's a lot of room for being yourself and for expressing yourself through code. And that might not be intuitive to folks who are new to coding, but I think it's one of the coolest things about code. So all of the assignments and stuff are going to leave a ton of room for you to interpret what it means to complete. And we'll see how that goes. Like I said, please give me feedback around all of this. Okay, so that's more of my feelings, I think. And let's get to finally what you probably thought this video was going to be about, and that's the content of the course, or how the course will actually work. So let me start from the course homepage. So this is the public-facing course homepage. The official course has its own homepage in D2L, which is just a tool that the college uses. But everything's going to be up here as well, or all of the public content is going to be here as well. So the way it's going to work is each week, the official class week will start on Friday, which is awkward, but this is how academic schedules work, whatever. At the start of each week, you will go to that week's page. Right now, I'm 3 weeks ahead of the students, or ahead of y'all. I hope to stay ahead of you, but we'll see. So this will have more content over time. We'll have more weeks over time. But right now, I don't know, I'll choose the first week, and you'll go to this page, and you'll just work through it. And it'll talk through the different things you'll learn and the different content sections. So week 1 is a little weird because it has a few different things you need to do, just because there's a lot of setup stuff. So you're going to set up GitHub, you're going to set up an environment, and then you're going to learn HTML. So actually, let's go to like week 2, because this is maybe a more canonical example of what it's going to look like, just because week 1 is kind of separate. Okay, so given a week, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to have just an intro video, which is going to be real short. This is 3 minutes long, and it's just going to talk about kind of it's going to talk about what we are going to talk about, if that makes sense. It's just going to kind of introduce the concepts as a whole, just kind of set you up for the week. Then you'll read or watch through some content. So you can either read it, which is this link here. You'll have a link to like a written tutorial, which you can kind of think of as like the textbook of the course. Some of this will point to stuff that I had written, many years ago when I was originally writing Happy Coding. Some of it's brand new for this course. It's a mix, but it's all, open source out there on the internet. So you'll read through the week's sort of like textbook material, which will introduce a concept. In this case, it's CSS, but each week will have its own thing. You can also watch the video version of that content. So I'm going to have both. You can do either one or both, or switch between them. I personally recommend doing both, just because I've tried my best to make sure that they're one-on-one, but there's likely stuff in the video that's not in the written tutorial, and vice versa. So it's kind of like the in a traditional course, you would think of this as being like the textbook and this as being the lecture. So I would say read the textbook chapter, watch the lecture, and that's kind of how the content itself will work. And then after you do that, then you'll complete a project. And so there's a video that introduces the project as well, but it's also pretty short and just kind of walks you through the like how to get started. And, you know, you'll learn more about all of this as the weeks progress, but just to sort of give you a preview, let me, oh my goodness, I should have prepared this a little bit better, but whatever. All of the projects are in a GitHub repo. And again, you'll learn about exactly what that is in week 1, but all of that's here, and you have starter code that you'll edit and modify to make each project your own. So for example, I don't know, week 1, the project is to modify this file to introduce yourself. And you'll do that to sort of practice what you would have learned in week 1, which is all about HTML tags. So that's what each week is going to look like. And there will be however many weeks there are in a semester, 15 or 16 or something. Spring break is also in there somewhere. And each week will have its own topic, and you'll work through the content, work through the project. I think I'll throw in a quiz as well, at least for the official course, just to have another sort of touch point. And we'll repeat that process for 16 times until the end of the semester. Okay, so that is, I think, everything I wanted to explain. So that's that's how the course is going to work. That's the background of the course, why you are listening to this dude in the corner, what my goals are, and how I'm thinking about the course, and what I'm hoping that you get out of it as well. So yeah, I think from here, your next step is to work through week 1. So good luck with that. Hopefully you have fun. And as you have questions, please let me know. If you're an official student, you can reach out to me through Discord or email or any of the traditional ways. If you're taking this course sort of publicly through like the open source kind of thing, I would recommend going to the forum, and this is how you can reach me here. So if you have questions or feedback or anything, please post it there. Okay, cool. So that's it. I don't know how to end any of these videos, so I get rambly at the end. So instead of rambling for 5 more minutes, I will say I am really excited for this course. It feels like a culmination of a lot of things, and it's super experimental, and I'm nervous, and I'm probably going to get a few things wrong, and all of that is okay, because this is really exciting, and I'm excited to see what we sort of create together. So yeah, good luck, and as always, of course, happy coding.